Alcohol addiction is a growing crisis, affecting millions of lives each year. Statistics reveal that nearly 14.5 million adults struggle with alcohol use disorder in the United States alone. It's not just a number, it's a reflection of lives interrupted, families torn apart, and futures placed on hold. The emotional toll is immeasurable, as the battle against addiction is often fought in silence. For those caught in the grip of alcoholism, it's not just about the drink, it's about the pain, the shame, and the seemingly endless cycle of despair. I never imagined I would be part of that statistic. My journey started in a place that felt harmless, almost celebratory. Social drinking had always been a part of my life: weekend get-togethers, holiday parties, and dinners with friends. At first, it felt like a choice. A glass of wine here, a beer there. But slowly, that choice turned into a need, and that need became a dependence that controlled my life. It began subtly. I started looking forward to the end of the day, not for the rest but for the release I found in a drink. Stressful day at work? Pour a glass. Argument with a loved one? Open the bottle. It became my go-to solution for every problem, big or small. What I didn't realize was that it wasn't solving anything. It was masking my pain, my insecurities, and my fear of facing life head-on. One drink turned into 2, then 3, and soon I lost count. Weekends blurred into weekdays. The person I used to be, the one who laughed easily and tackled challenges head-on, became a stranger. I was living in a haze, disconnected from everything and everyone I loved. My family noticed first. They began to pull away, not out of a lack of love but because they didn't know how to help me. I'll never forget the look in my partner's eyes, part sadness, part frustration, as they tried to reach me, tried to remind me of who I used to be. But the alcohol was louder than their words, drowning out their pleas with promises of temporary relief. The hardest moments were the mornings after. Waking up with a pounding headache and a gnawing sense of guilt. I would promise myself that it was the last time, that I would stop, that I would take control of my life again. But by midday, the craving would return, stronger than my resolve. The cycle was endless, and I felt powerless to break free. At work, I began to notice the cracks forming. Missed deadlines, sloppy mistakes, and a growing sense of dread every time my phone rang. I lived in constant fear of being found out, of losing the career I had worked so hard to build. But even that fear wasn't enough to stop me. The addiction was too strong, its grip on my life unrelenting. Rock bottom came unexpectedly. It wasn't a dramatic event, no car crash or arrest. It was a quiet realization, sitting alone in my living room, surrounded by empty bottles. I looked around and saw the evidence of what my life had become. The person I used to be felt like a distant memory. I had become a shell of myself, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of what I had lost. My health was deteriorating. The sleepless nights, the constant nausea, and the relentless anxiety were taking their toll. My doctor's warnings about liver damage and long-term consequences echoed in my mind, but even those dire predictions weren't enough to scare me straight. It was as if I was on a runaway train, unable to stop, hurtling toward an inevitable crash. The isolation was perhaps the worst part. Addiction is a lonely disease, even when you're surrounded by people who care about you. I pushed away friends, avoided family gatherings, and canceled plans just to be alone with my drink. The silence was deafening, but it felt safer than facing the judgment and disappointment of those I loved. The morning after my breaking point felt different. The usual fog of regret was there, but alongside it was a fragile sliver of hope. Something inside me whispered, "You can do this," though my doubts screamed louder. I stared at myself in the mirror, pale and hollow-eyed, and made a silent promise: this was the beginning of change. My first act was admitting to myself that I needed help, a step that had terrified me for years. There's a weight to silence that crushes you over time, and for me, it was unbearable. When I called my best friend, the words were heavy and awkward, but their relief came through instantly. "I'm so glad you're ready," they said. It was the first of many conversations that proved I wasn't as alone as I had convinced myself to be. Taking the first steps acknowledging the problem was only the beginning. I had no idea what to do next, so I started searching for local addiction support services. Finding a counselor who specialized in substance abuse was transformative. Walking into that first session was nerve-wracking, but I'll never forget the way my counselor listened. There was no judgment, no impatience, just a genuine desire to help me unpack years of pain and habits that had led me here. We worked together to identify my triggers. Stress was a massive one: work deadlines, unresolved conflicts, and even small inconveniences could push me toward the bottle. Loneliness was another. I had relied on alcohol to fill an emotional void, something I hadn't fully acknowledged until then. Naming these triggers felt like reclaiming a part of myself, even though it was hard to face. One of the most surprising realizations was how much my environment fed into my drinking habits. The bars I frequented, the social circles where alcohol was the centerpiece, even the corner store where I habitually bought my nightly supply, all of it needed to change. It was painful to let go of certain routines and even some friendships, but I knew these changes were necessary if I wanted to break free. Building new habits. The emptiness left behind by quitting drinking felt overwhelming at first. Alcohol had consumed so much of my time and energy that I didn't know what to do with myself. My counselor suggested finding activities that would occupy my mind and keep my hands busy during the most vulnerable moments. I started with simple things. Morning walks became a ritual. At first, they were more about escaping than enjoying, but over time, I began to notice the quiet beauty around me, the chirping of birds, the rustle of leaves, the warmth of the sun on my skin. It was grounding in a way I hadn't expected. Exercise also became a lifeline. I joined a local gym, where I could channel my frustration and anxiety into something productive. The physical changes were slow, but the mental clarity was almost immediate. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of accomplishment that didn't come from the bottom of a glass. Rediscovering hobbies was another turning point. I had always loved painting as a child, but life had pushed it to the wayside. Picking up a brush again was like reconnecting with an old friend. The act of creating something, no matter how small, filled a void that alcohol had never truly addressed. Leaning on support systems. One of the hardest parts of recovery was admitting to my family the depth of my struggle. I had kept them at arm's length for years, afraid of their disappointment. When I finally opened up, their response shocked me. There was hurt, yes, but also an outpouring of love and support that I hadn't expected. It wasn't easy to face their questions and concerns, but those conversations were the first step toward repairing the relationships I had damaged. Joining a support group was another step that scared me initially. Walking into that room, I felt exposed and vulnerable, but hearing others share their stories was like a balm for my soul. These were people who understood me in a way that even my closest friends couldn't. The group became a source of strength, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. The cravings and the struggles. Recovery isn't a straight line. There were moments when I felt like giving up, when the cravings hit so hard it felt like I was drowning. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, I found myself standing in front of the liquor aisle at the store. My heart raced as I stared at the bottles, their gleaming labels promising relief. But then I thought about everything I had worked for, about the people who believed in me. I walked out empty-handed, shaking but proud. Those moments taught me the importance of having a plan. I learned to carry small distractions with me, a book, a puzzle app on my phone, even a piece of gum to keep my hands and mouth busy. It sounds trivial, but these tiny strategies helped me through some of the darkest times. The emotional healing beyond the physical and social aspects, recovery was about confronting my inner demons. I began journaling daily, pouring my thoughts and fears onto paper. It was a space where I could be brutally honest with myself, where I could process the guilt and shame that had weighed me down for so long. Meditation also became a cornerstone of my healing. Sitting quietly with my thoughts was uncomfortable at first, but it taught me to observe my emotions without being consumed by them. Slowly, I began to see myself not as a failure, but as someone capable of change and growth. Discovering beyond the bottle. One of the most pivotal moments in my journey came when my counselor recommended the book Beyond the Bottle: How to Conquer Alcohol Addiction. At first, I wasn't sure what to expect. I had tried reading about addiction before, but nothing had really clicked. This book was different. From the first chapter, it felt like the author was speaking directly to me. The practical advice was easy to follow, and the insights into the emotional and psychological aspects of addiction were eye-opening. The book didn't just focus on quitting, it provided tools for building a life that didn't rely on alcohol. It helped me understand the underlying causes of my addiction and gave me actionable steps to address them. What stood out the most was the emphasis on self-compassion. The book reminded me that recovery is a journey, not a destination, and that setbacks are part of the process. It encouraged me to celebrate small victories and to keep pushing forward, even when the path seemed impossible. If you're struggling with alcohol addiction, I can't recommend Beyond the Bottle enough. It's more than just a guide, it's a lifeline. You can find a digital copy at libriffy.com through the link in the description. This book changed my life, and I truly believe it can change yours too. Recovery is possible, and this is the perfect place to start.